Hello and welcome to another video from the Tradelands Nation. With the recent changeover to winter, snowstorms have reappeared in the Tradelands. And when that happens, it means that ice mining is back. It also means it's time to release one of our next videos, and that is how to be an effective ice miner. Now, in the time from recording this video to the point at which we are actually releasing it, another big update has occurred, and that is the release of new ice axes and pickaxes in crates. We're going to talk about these in another video, but know that this will likely change the dynamics of ice mining that we discuss here today in this recording, but since they're so new, we're not able to cover the impact in detail just yet. All that we can say is that at this point, the addition of these axes should have a positive impact to the overall ice market, and that many of the mining techniques that we discuss in this video should also apply to them as well. So with that little disclaimer out of the way, let's get on with the video. Ice mining is a high-stakes game. It's one of the rarest materials that you can acquire in-game, but it's also one of the most costly. And the reason for this is that ice mining requires you to make this. The Electrosteel Pickaxe. If you are a miner, this is probably the most expensive tool you will ever build. It requires 5 angelwood and 7 electrosteel, which based on market prices as of making this video will cost you around 100,000 doubloons to make. That means just to break even on your investment, you would have to acquire ice worth over that amount. If you consider the fact that nearly every other pickaxe in the game can easily return over double what it costs to make, then that means that you need to obtain 15 ice or more per axe, or otherwise you are actually unprofitable. And because of this, if you had to pick just one axe in this entire game to min-max, the Electrosteel axe is the one. After all, you're giving an upfront investment of 100,000 doubloons, so you'd better be getting your money's worth. And that is going to be the focus of today's video. Let's cover some of the basic assumptions that, in my opinion, aren't as well documented as they should be, but are very important to understand. And the first is that you can only obtain ice from non-spawn islands in a nighttime snowstorm. Here is a map that shows what each island in Tradelands drops. Specifically, look for the ones with the glowing white circle. This map will be available on our website around the time when we post this video. There are also other guides that show the same information that are available online. But if you aren't using one of them, know that any place that would normally drop gems, including onyx by the way, they will drop ice during a nighttime snowstorm. A second assumption is don't mine if you weren't on the server when the storm started. I remember some advice from past years, and that is if you can't see snowflakes on your screen, that means while it may look like an ice storm, it will be reported by players as an ice storm. You won't be able to get ice from it. In past years, I have tested this and found it to be accurate, and I assume it hasn't changed, so you will want to follow this advice if I were you with that expensive pickaxe. The two most common reasons this happens is if 1, you reset your character, and in fact just allow me to demonstrate. Notice that I have actually just finished mining, but I'm going to reset my character here and go back to Whitecrest. And notice that resetting has actually stopped the snowflakes from falling, but you can still see the 2 moons behind me. That means that if I were to go back out to that island, I'm not likely to get ice now. That's why I did this at the end of the storm and not the beginning. But the second is that not being on the server when the ice storm starts may prevent you from actually getting ice altogether. At the same time, it means that those storm reporting sites are actually pretty useless in winter because all that it will do is alert you to a storm that you won't be able to get much out of because you have a lower chance of getting ice as a result of joining late. The next one to talk about is one that I don't see a lot of information about online, and that is proper axe handling. To summarize this advice in one sentence, as soon as you strike a rock with your pickaxe, commit to fully finishing off that axe before you put it away. I see people mess this up all the time, both experienced players and inexperienced players. The reason this is a bad idea is because of how axes handle durability. You see, each time you start mining with a new pickaxe, the game attrits you with the first few hits, presumably to ensure that you can't exploit it into having unlimited durability. But then, after you obtain your first drop, The game remembers your drop rate going forward, and then you can start making steady returns with your pickaxe. But when you put it away, the game actually wipes out this data. When you pull it out again, the game treats it as though it's a brand new pickaxe from a drop rate perspective, but with a lower durability. And that's because every time you put that axe back on your belt, you are costing yourself a durability point. And for Electrosteel pickaxes, that's 1,000 doubloons lost every time you stow it, because it means you are guaranteed that the next hit you make will not drop you anything. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can actually test this yourself. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Using this throwaway axe that I happen to have in my inventory while I was recording this. And for those who watched the Merope stream, you'll know exactly which axe this was. It was one of the ones I used to test the durability losses on the rocks inside of that mine. And now that I've used it for that, I can't use it for my data analysis anymore, which makes it a good candidate to show you what I mean, since I'm already pretty sure I know the result of this. I'm going to hit this rock behind me 3 times, then I'm going to stow my axe and pull it out again. If I follow some of the guidelines that I see on Mining Online, I should expect to get a drop every 4 or 5 hits with this copper axe. But if my statement about the pickaxe drop rates being reset each time I put it away are correct, then my total results will be significantly less. So that exercise cost me roughly 10 durability points, and I got no drops from it, as you can see here. I was originally planning to hit 3 or 4 rocks to prove my point, but that one rock had way more durability than I thought, and I think I've made my point. I mean, I'd like to say I'm shocked and I'm stunned, but I'm not, obviously. This is exactly in line with what I expected. I could hit every rock in Tradelands using this same technique, and with whatever axe I wanted, and the results will be the same every time. In other words, if you didn't figure it out by now, there is a startup cost to every pickaxe and wood axe that you use in this game. This effectively is a cost of doing business if you're a material farmer. Your objective is to get past this initial startup cost and then keep your axe out while you continue to make profits going forward. I know it looks goofy while I'm sitting here waving my pickaxe around like an idiot. When you are using a cheap axe like a copper one that I just showed you, the loss of a single digit of durability isn't really going to break the bank. And so this advice isn't really important to it. And again, it goes back to, this is why most players probably won't even notice this is an issue. But Electrosteel, Ice, and Sapphire, these single digits of durability can make a big difference. The drop rate for Ice is around 5%, by the way, which means you reduce your total ice collected per pickaxe by as much as 10% each time you put that thing away. So to conclude this point, I will go back to the statement I made at the beginning. As soon as you strike a rock with your pickaxe, commit to fully finishing off that axe before you put it away. If for some reason you do have to stow your axe, there is one time when it is actually safe to do so, and with no ill effects. That is, when you receive a drop from a rock at the same time that the rock is also exhausted and disappears, putting your axe away will not cost you a durability point. But to understand why that is, we have to move into our next piece of advice for min-maxing in Ice, and that is to talk about the rocks themselves. You see, rocks have their own durability ratings too. They have their own drop rates, they even have their own drop tables. That's why the rocks on Cannonier's Key, for example, have different drop chances for gemstones. If you understood the point we were making earlier about how you can significantly impact your drop rates by putting your axe away or not putting your axe away, then hopefully you'll understand this next point, which is summarized like this. If you think the rock in front of you is about to break, then stop mining that rock. It sounds implausible, right? In fact, I didn't even think anything of it myself until the developer actually posted an update saying that they had increased the durability of each rock, which then caused me to start tracking that data, and then it led to this discovery. If a rock breaks, the chance of your next drop being a rare material like ice, gems, or electrosteel falls by 33%. Keep in mind, this is on top of the already low drop rate for those rare materials. And for reference, that's around 7 ice per pickaxe replaced with iron drops instead. The reason is simpler than you might think, and that's because if your rock is exhausted, you lose all of the progress that you made on that node unless you are willing to sit there and wait for it to refresh without going to another one. Yeah, no one's going to do that. And aside from perhaps the same memory leak reason I gave earlier, I really don't have anything to explain this phenomenon. And it would take a considerable amount of time and effort to figure it out, literally sitting there for an entire day mining one single node, which I'm not going to do. The average rock in Tradelands will give 5.15 drops before the node is fully exhausted. In other words, once you've obtained 4 or 5 drops from that node, you should expect that it's probably going to break on you the next time that you try to hit it. And at this point, you can do one of 3 things. First, you can just stop mining at that node and go to the next one. Then let someone else finish that rock off for you and take the L. Ethical implications aside, the other issue is that if you are on an island by yourself, you'll need to finish that rock off before it will refresh on that node. So that means once you've hit every rock and you've left them all standing, you'd have to hop to another island, one where you can't be assured someone else didn't just try to do the exact same thing to you. The second option, and probably the easiest, is to just finish off the rock anyway, and then follow our earlier advice about keeping that pickaxe out and not stowing it. You see, stowing it lowers the chance of a drop from 33% to 50%, by the way. But keeping it out allows you to keep the loss you take to a minimum. In our analysis, we found that if you are diligent about it, the total ice you collect per axe is only lower by 1.1 per axe, meaning instead of 23 ice, maybe you're only getting 22 ice. On a single axe, you probably won't notice. We had to do this at scale before we saw a significant difference. That's because when you mine 2,000 items in a week, all during ice storms, that's when it begins to total to around 20 ice lost. The third, and the one that works best in the long run if you're able to put in all that extra effort, is to switch to a less costly axe on your 5th drop. You need to switch right on the 5th drop though. Copper or iron axes are cheap and work well to finish off a node, and it actually can make a profit in doing this. You likely won't notice the durability loss either. If you wanted to try and maximize your profits though, the best is the emerald axe, as ice storms also improve the drop rates for gemstones, and so you tend to end up with the best of both worlds when you do it this way. But the trade-off is, all you're really doing is exchanging durability for time. You'll have to decide which is more important to you. For me, a normal Electrosteel Pickaxe usually requires about 20 minutes to fully utilize, so I can do around 2 per storm. Or, if you use the axe switching method, you'll probably get 1 Electrosteel axe done and 1 emerald axe done. Depending on how many ice storms you chase, that may or may not be profitable as a venture for you. And so with that, we talked about the weather, we talked about the pickaxes themselves, and we talked about the rocks. So the final and probably most impactful advice we have for ice mining is about the servers themselves. And listen, it's simple. If you are on a laggy server, then do not do any mining. I don't care how much you want to, you will lose this battle, I assure you of that. If you do a lot of combat in Tradelands, I'm pretty sure you're already aware of some of the challenges when you're on a laggy server, but you have no idea how difficult it is to mine properly on a laggy server. I've only rage quit this game a few times, and every one of these times that I can remember was because of a failed mining run. The problem with lag is how it impacts your mining. You see, to obtain a drop from a hit with a pickaxe, 3 things need to happen. First, the axe has to register that you swung it and that you collided with a node or another object. 2. The rock has to register if the hit results in a success or a failure. If it was a success, it has to return an object from a drop table. Third, the drop table. It has to know the right axe, rock, and weather, and then it returns a result from its table accordingly. The problem is, on a laggy server, if this process is broken, then you don't get anything out of your hit, even if you were meant to. The process can break at any of these 3 points, which can also compound the problem. Let's say that the game registers an axe hit, and the rock registers it as having received the drop, but then the game times out when returning the item from the drop table. Then the axe and the rock both believe that you got an item, even though you didn't, and they have reset their drop chances thinking that you've got something. This can be incredibly frustrating, especially if you grind these as your primary profession in Tradelands. I'll just warn you now, the Lonely Island, the westmost island on this map, is constantly a lag trap. I don't know why. Maybe something in the distance is like right on the edge of the draw area, so it just keeps reloading. But I can go from getting 20 gold per run to only getting iron the next time with the exact same axe types. The swings in these numbers are insane, but probably nothing demonstrates this issue more than the ironic experience I had mere hours before the winter event started during the final Electrostorm of 2022. And I didn't initially plan on showing this video. I recorded it for analysis purposes only, but others in my group have convinced me that it is actually a good demonstration of the techniques I talk about here, as well as how to fix lag issues, specifically lag issues, if they are occurring to you. So here goes. I was trade running on a high latency server when it happened. Against my better judgment, I beelined it to Smoky Island once I recognized that this was going to be an Electrostorm. A dead giveaway to my bad lag. My total stamina never drops below 90%. 3 rocks in, one of my drops actually timed out. Exactly the chart I showed you earlier. It decoupled the drop table from this axe. I planned to just finish off the rest of this axe for science, but halfway through, I had an internal dialogue with myself and decided to do a min-max run with this. It was at this point, about 8 minutes and 30 seconds into my run, that I looked at my axe, realized I had 46 durability left, and I had no Electrosteel. So at this point, I did 2 things. 1, I decided to put my axe away, right after I'd received my last hit. This had the effect of actually reattaching the drop table to my axe, or it will when I pull it back out again. The second thing that I'm doing right now is I'm trying to calculate the exact time that I need to hit the next rock to get the most Electrosteel out of my hits, and also that I've left enough time that rock in front of me will have its RNG reset. Without walking you through the dialogue I'm having, effectively I've learned that this has to happen right on the 34th minute, and so that's what I'm waiting for. So let's speed it up a little bit until we get to the first hit. And here it is. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, so it's pretty clear. I'm getting Electrosteel now, so the techniques I've used are working. So I'm gonna speed it back up again, but talk through this. If you're really interested in seeing how this went, you can use YouTube's feature to slow this down into real time and get a chance to see what I'm actually doing. But through the rest of my run, essentially, I'm going to be stowing my axe anytime I suspect that I was hit with a lag spike and then pulling it back out again to keep my table in sync, or anytime that I think that my random number generator has started to go flat on me. And rather than switch axes, as I mentioned you should do as a trick in the previous part of this video, I've instead switched up my mining path. It was originally sort of a figure 8, which is the ideal path if you're trying to find profitability in silver, and since Electrosteel is replaced with silver, that's why I was using that path. But now instead I'm using one that looks more heart-shaped, and again, you can watch me do this if you want to see and use the same path that I'm using, but this path focuses instead on hitting rocks in the right order so that they will exhaust at the exact same time that I get a rare drop item from them. As you can see, at the end of this, my half durability axe had returned 19 Electrosteel. Less than I'm used to, if I'm being honest. I usually get between 20 to 30 per pickaxe, and that's on the lower end. And I still had about 12 minutes left of this storm, but I was so salty after losing half of my axe's durability because of this server. There was no way I was going to continue on this any longer than I had to. So that was my experience. Looking back, I guess I really shouldn't be too upset with the results, all things considered. And of course, now that we've moved into ice mining, it's been a whole different ball game, and I've been having a lot of fun with this ever since. I'll conclude by saying that min-maxing hard like this was mentally taxing, and I don't recommend it unless you are really desperate. But you can see that there can be good results that come out of this if you decide to do that for yourself. The things we mentioned earlier, which are min-maxing but not nearly as hard as I was doing on that one video, should be sufficient to give you a good profit for 95% of the time. Dead giveaways of problems, especially those around lag, are if you swung an axe and you didn't hear a sound of it hitting, but you should have, a delay between hitting a rock and getting the reward, if you happen to have your inventory open and when you hit a rock you notice that more than one point of durability is removed, or if it's taking you more than 6 hits to hit something to get anything back, that's a surefire sign you're having a lag problem. Things that experienced miners have all faced, I'm sure, and they can attest to them actually happening to them as well. But to summarize everything that I've said in this video, it really comes down to these 3 things. 1. Don't wait until the last minute if you're going to mine ice. Stake out an island in advance and just wait for it to become nighttime. Do it before the 20th minute of the hour so that way you're sure that you'll see snowflakes if it is an ice storm. 2. Be constantly vigilant of lag spikes and take the necessary corrective actions when they happen. That means knowing when and how to reset your axe or your rock to fix lag and maximize drop chances. And 3, don't, for the love of anything holy, put away your axe to go do something else in the middle of mining. Use it until its durability hits 0. Other than that, good luck out there, everyone, and happy mining.